So you completed your application, all your materials are in for that CRNA school of your top choice. They finally send you that email and they want you to come in for an interview. This is your ticket in and you can't mess up now. Preparation is so important for this process, and a lot of people don't know how to proceed once they get that exciting email or call. It's time for you to adequately prepare yourself to be able to prove who you say you are on paper, in person. One of the top questions that is generally asked is, tell me about yourself. Why do you want to become a CRNA? While some may think you can't necessarily prepare for the interview, I honestly believe that preparation is key. While you don't know what they're going to ask you, you can definitely prepare for the unknown and prepare for the mental stress that the interview is going to cause. But before I get into preparation, let's talk about the types of interviews that you might see when you go in that day. So there's two main formats of the interview. You can have your one-on-one interview and then your group interviews. Within the one-on-one interview, it is what it says. It's a one-on-one with you and another person. It could be a faculty member or the director of the department that you interview with. I actually had 2 one-on-one interview sessions. For the group sessions, you generally have an interviewing committee that can consist of faculty members, current students, and then you might also be directly competing with other candidates. In the other group format, it'll be the interviewing committee, but you might not be directly competing with another student. So it might be you and that interviewing committee. So those are the 2 general formats. Within those, you'll have the getting to know you portion and then the clinical based portion. Within the getting to know you portion, those are going to be your main questions, like why did you decide to apply to CRNA School? How are you going to pay for CRNA School? Tell me about a time you had a conflict with a coworker. How did you resolve it? Tell me about an ethical dilemma. What did you do? What are your strengths and weaknesses? Those are the types of questions that they're going to ask you for the getting to know you portion. For the clinical based portion, it's going to be mostly based off of your clinical experience, what you put on your resume. The clinical section may also include you going into the simulation lab, and generally it'll be kind of like an ACLS type scenario that you'll have to go through. You can also be asked to write a essay, not a resume. You may also be asked to write an essay, or take a test, or draw a picture, or any other random thing that they might ask you to do. It's up to them. So in terms of preparation, it's the foundation, and my interview went spectacular because I think I prepared myself well. Even though I didn't necessarily know what they were going to ask me, I knew the top topics that I should focus on, and that in and of itself reduced my anxiety level. Like, your anxiety level is going to be way up here. Like, it's going to be high, but if you're gonna bump it down just a little bit, when you get into that interview, you're only gonna be up here instead of way up there like you would have been if you didn't prepare yourself for the interview. So the main 2 resources that I used for my interview were the CCRN review books. So if you haven't gotten your CCRN, go to the library, pick up a book, because that information is really great for you to know as an ICU nurse, as an anesthesia provider. So get that CCRN book, and then I also used Duke's Anesthesia Secrets, the book that I gave away to 3 lucky winners. And I liked that book because it presented the information in question format. So it would say, what is dead space? How would you interpret this ABG? What's respiratory acidosis? So I was able to read those questions, look at their answers, and then that helped me when they asked me those questions on the interview. So some of the top topics that you should be prepared for. Number 1, well, not number 1, these aren't in any particular order, but EKG interpretation. So you need to go beyond knowing sinus bradycardia, sinus tachycardia, atrial fibrillation, but know your heart blocks. Know what you're going to do to treat those heart blocks as well if it's symptomatic. Know your ACLS backwards and forwards. So that includes your H's and T's if you remember that. Also know ABG interpretation. So for this, you don't necessarily just want to know if the ABG that they present to you is respiratory acidosis. Know whether it's compensated or uncompensated, and then know the treatments. Are you going to change the respiratory rate? Are you going to change the tidal volume? So know those things as well. Another thing that you might be asked and something to review is your pulmonary artery catheter. How is that inserted through the heart? Which chambers of the heart does it go through? Which valves does it go through? Also vasoactive drips. So know those main drugs that you work with on a day-to-day basis in the ICU, and know the pharmacology behind it. And lastly, another topic would be ventilator management. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the ABG interpretation. So within the clinical based questions, you might be asked direct questions like, what is epinephrine? Or how is epinephrine metabolized? Or tell me about milrinone. You might be asked those straightforward basic questions. In addition to that, you might be asked scenario-based questions. They might even ask you to tell them about a scenario that you had at work. So know some scenarios. Just think about your day-to-day practices, know those scenarios, and know them backwards and forwards. Don't include things that you are not 100% positive on and have that information for. Because if you include something that you don't really know very well, they can pimp you on it because you've said it. You really don't want to dig yourself in a hole because you're trying to elevate yourself too high. At this point, you want to be confident in your abilities, but you still want to be humble as well. It is very, very hard to BS through an interview. It is very easy to BS on your resume. So whatever you put on your resume, make sure that those are things that you can comfortably and confidently talk about. Just be yourself and be honest. So for the getting to know you questions, I basically scoured a lot of blogs, a lot of forums, wrote down questions that I possibly might be asked during the interview, and then I wrote down my answers to those questions. Not to the point of memorization, but I wanted to be comfortable enough with my answers so that they were clear, concise, and complete, because I did not want to ramble on during the interview, and I also didn't want to not know what I wanted to say for the question if I were to be asked that question. So I practiced about 30 to 40 questions, and I recorded myself so that I knew that I was making proper eye contact, I wasn't saying too much, and I was answering the questions how I wanted to answer it. So I think that's the best way for you to prepare for those types of questions. And when you're recording yourself, don't put the camera right in front of you face to face. Put it on the side so you can watch your eye contact to whoever or whatever you're looking at. So this is the part that everyone forgets about. You're there to be interviewed, but you're also there to interview the school. They're looking to see if you are a best fit for them, and you're looking to see if that school is the best fit for you. So don't forget about that. When they ask you if you have any questions, you better have some questions for them. Some of the things that I asked my school was how was the support for students? What kinds of things do they have available to make sure that their students succeed? What kind of board review? Is that integrated within the curriculum, or is it something that students have to do on their own time? Do I have to travel for clinical? If I have to travel, am I responsible for housing? Do I have to go back to class and not have online classes if I'm going to be at a distant clinical site? How many arterial lines? How many central lines am I going to get? Do I have to compete with residents for cases? Are we going to get hospitals where it might be difficult for me to get my numbers? So on interview day, obviously get there early and bring your portfolio. In your portfolio, this is the one that I brought to my interview, and inside there's a notepad for me to write down any notes that I wanted to write down. I also jotted down, like in the top corner, like my 3 strengths and 3 weaknesses in small writing, or some other things that I might just have to glimpse at if they ask me and I can't remember because I'm nervous. But in this portfolio, have basically everything that you submitted to the school for your application. So that includes your essay, transcript, your certifications. On my interview day, they actually lost my transcripts. I went into my portfolio, pulled out my extra copy, and I definitely got, some more bonus points for being prepared. I also wrote down the questions that I wanted to ask them too. Last few tips: you're not going to feel good after your interview. My interview went very well. but I still felt like I did not answer things appropriately, or I left out information. Oh, I should have said this, I should have said that. You're going to feel like that, but you really don't want to dwell on the past, especially if they ask you a question you don't know the answer to. They want to see how you handle stress and how you move through that and how you get past it. So if you allow yourself to get upset about one question you couldn't answer, that's going to set the tone for the rest of your interview. So you have to learn how to move past those things, and for the next questions, answer to the best of your ability. If you have a low GPA, this is your time to shine and to take emphasis off of it. They obviously saw something in your resume or in your essay or something that one of your references said about you for them to invite you to interview. So don't let that discourage you, and let them know the volunteer work that you're doing, the unit that you're working on, and some interesting things that you're doing within your unit. You might be taking graduate courses or plan to take graduate courses to elevate your GPA even higher. So make sure that you hone in on those things and elevate those things rather than focusing on your GPA, because if you do have a lower GPA, they might ask you about it, and you're there to defend yourself and stick up for yourself and let them know that you're doing other things and that you're not just that number, you're not just your GPA. Lastly, send a thank you note. If there was something particular and relevant that you can include in your thank you note that will make them think of you, include that, something unique to yourself. So those are all the things, those are the tips and tricks that I have for you guys to succeed in your interview process. If you have any questions, you guys know how to contact me, email me, hit me up on Instagram, comment below, but like, share, and what's the other thing you have to do? I did post the interview questions, about 30 of them, I think, on my blog at nursenell.com. But remember to follow me on Instagram at IamNurseNell for some other fun goodies about CRNA School. Thank you for watching, and I truly hope that this helps you succeed on your interview day.